In this case study, we will examine how problems with compliance in a clinical trial could jeopardize funding by a granting agency. For example, we will review some of the findings described in a letter from the National Institute of Mental Health, or NIMH, to an academic research institution regarding violations that have taken place during the conduct of a clinical trial funded by the institute. The letter includes demands for repayment of research funding. The names and other identifying details have been changed, but the infringements have been left unaltered in order to accurately reflect real-world findings. Dr. Smith was a child psychiatrist at Empire State University, investigating how the brains of adolescents diagnosed with bipolar disorder function during a manic state. During the peer review process of her grant application to NIMH, Dr. Smith was made aware of critical human subjects issues in her protocol, including the risks associated with lithium treatment and withdrawal symptoms in children under the age of 12, for whom lithium is not FDA approved, the enrollment criteria requiring that subjects must be medication naive, and the importance of the investigator being removed from direct clinical care of any patients enrolled in the study. Dr. Smith filed a resubmission with resolutions that addressed all the issues and concerns that were raised in the review. After a third NIH peer review of the clinical research application, Empire State University was awarded $3.1 million of federal funding for Dr. Smith to conduct the study under the terms and conditions described by the NIMH. One of the terms was a requirement for the investigator to obtain NIMH approval for any significant changes to the project before they are implemented. Unfortunately, the investigator did not comply with this requirement. After the study was underway, the investigator made changes to the study without approval of the NIMH. For example, the protocol was amended to lower the age range of study subjects to include 10 to 12-year-old children and change the inclusion criteria from medication-naive patients to lithium-naive patients. Although the investigator sought and received approvals for these changes by the university's IRB, the NIMH was never notified. Dr. Smith also failed to follow all procedures described in the protocol, including the administration of pregnancy tests to a subset of study participants. The investigator's noncompliance with the stipulations of the grant eventually led to Empire State University receiving a letter from the NIMH requesting a refund of the $3 million federal grant. These funds are requested due to the university's serious noncompliance with human subjects research and failure to adhere to the rules of the National Institute of Health Grants Policy Statement. Specifically, the letter described violations associated with the following regulations. Funds awarded for NIH research grants shall be expended solely for the purposes for which the funds were granted, in accordance with the approved application and budget, the regulations of 42 CFR Part 52, the terms and conditions of the award, and the applicable cost principles prescribed in 45 CFR Part 75 Subpart E. Although some of these violations are not GCP violations, this case highlights other rules and regulations that must be followed during the conduct of a clinical trial. As mentioned above, all significant changes to the original specific aims of the study should have been communicated to and approved by the NIMH before being implemented. However, Dr. Smith's annual progress reports to the NIH misrepresented the study as proceeding unaltered. How could proper monitoring have helped to prevent these violations? The role of a monitor is to verify that all rules and regulations are followed during a clinical trial, the rights and well-being of human subjects are protected, and trial data are accurate. Therefore, a monitor should be informed of all the rules and regulations governing the trial. Discussions with the investigator at the beginning of the study, for example, should have included the funding source for the study and any associated stipulations that are related to the study conduct. This step would be especially important for investigator-initiated studies, as these are often funded by governmental agencies and may be associated with specific requirements. A diligent monitor should ask the investigator and/or study team if there are any special stipulations associated with the funding source. Having this knowledge would have enabled the monitor to mitigate the risk of non-compliance. In this case, the monitor would be aware of the need to have the changes to the protocol approved by both the university's IRB and the NIMH prior to being implemented. During interim visits, a monitor would typically review informed consent forms, study data, and any changes to the study. The monitor would ask the study team and, if there were changes, verify that the documentation of the amendment has been placed in the regulatory binder. It is during this step that the monitor would have noticed that a protocol amendment had been approved by the site's IRB but not by the NIMH. The monitor would have then informed the investigator that the funding agency needs to be contacted immediately before proceeding with the trial. When reviewing case report forms, the monitor would have discovered that female subjects were not provided pregnancy tests before receiving lithium treatment. The monitor would have documented this error and discussed it with the PI. The monitor would then have confirmed that the site submit protocol deviations to document this incident and implement corrective and preventive actions to ensure that the issue is prevented for future participants. The monitor should ensure that both the IRB and the NIMH are informed of these deviations and provided with a copy of the corrective and preventive action plan. The monitor would also verify that all necessary materials, like pregnancy tests, are present and stored properly. By reviewing source documents or electronic records and keeping regular contact with the investigator throughout the course of the study, a monitor could have detected that the PI was overlapping her role as a PI with her role as a treating physician by continuing to treat patients who were enrolled in the study. The monitor should inform the investigator that doing this is a severe protocol deviation. Again, the monitor should ensure that the site submits protocol deviations for this and implements a corrective and preventive action plan. During future visits, the monitor should examine the medical records of the participants to verify that the principal investigator is not acting as their clinician. As can be seen above, a monitor could have provided additional oversight and mitigated the compliance issues early. You can view this letter by going to the link shown on the screen.